Professor Simon Bedford from Western Sydney University. I would like to share and hang on a second. Yeah. Okay. Professor Simon Bedford is a prof and chancellor learning features at the Western Sydney University. He is responsible for the leadership of the strategic educational innovation and collaboration to shape the university commitment to ensuring its students to fulfill their potential to become influential global citizen scholars in a new technology-enabled world. He is an award-winning teacher who has worked in the field of higher education for over 25 years. He has helped to drive several national projects, led to Higher Education Research and Development Society Australia. He is also working with the Council of the Australian University Leaders in the Learning and Teaching, and also a national peer review of the assessment project. And ladies and gentlemen, please listen and enjoy the Professor Simon Bedford recorded presentations.
Welcome, it's a pleasure to be here. In today's presentation, I'm going to give you some background into what higher education looked like pre-pandemic in Australia, some of the learnings coming from the last 18 months, and then where we see our future direction heading. So we believe the future of higher education depends on the ability of all to engage, access, and participate in learning through technology. This requires learning and creating knowledge formed through the contributions of teachers, students, and employers to give authenticity to that learning, moving students from being novice to professional through understanding their role in the future of work and society. This needs close partnerships, but also a way to bring these partners together, which we call partnership pedagogy. If the ability to access and use technology is going to underpin higher education, we need to reflect on the learnings of how the pandemic has accelerated that change and how our staff and students have responded, including questions around their access to technology and ability to use it effectively, something akin to a set of digital standards. Higher ed in Australia consists of some 43 universities, with private providers on top of that. These are spread around the various states and territories, and we are based over 11 campuses in and around Western Sydney, Australia's second largest city. You can see us marked in the map if you're not sure where we are. Australian universities are publicly funded and therefore accountable to government, needing to demonstrate their value add to society and relevance to work. Our course offerings are all standardised through the AQF. That's the Australian Qualifications Framework, from certificates to the doctoral degrees. If you look at the wheel, you can see how senior secondary certificates of education and schools feed into that profile. The wheel, though, doesn't yet have micro-credentials or short courses on it. Government funding of universities is complex and has suffered significant cuts in recent years and reallocation of funding. Pre-pandemic, there was an increasing internationalisation of Australian degrees as a really key export and worth something of the order of 40 billion Australian dollars in 2019. That makes it Australia's fourth biggest export after iron ore, coal and gas. Post-pandemic, the Job Ready Graduate, or JRG reforms, have removed funding from universities and given it back in the form of funding packages. One of those is called National Priorities and Industry Linkage Fund, or MPhil for short. It is hoped to deliver more job-ready graduates in the disciplines and regions where they are needed most and help drive the nation's economic recovery, which is likely to focus on STEM skills, STEM graduates, work-integrated learning, and co-designed with industry courses. These are performance-based funding packages, so post-2024, the more successful you are as an institution in meeting their targets, the more funding you will receive. So, with that in mind, let's now look at my institution before the pandemic hit. Western Sydney is a dynamic, expanding community. 50 kilometres west of the CBD, it's the biggest growth area in Australia with a new airport, and with that comes an Aerotropolis business park and a multiversity, which is a consortium of universities in New South Wales. Over the next 20 years or so, Western Sydney's population is expected to grow by 1 million, more than half of Sydney's overall expected population growth. So it's a good place for a university to be. The university's campuses are a network of vertical campuses, and you see our new Bankstown building there on our strategic plan, and more traditional horizontal campuses spread across Western Sydney. We are striving for efficient utilisation of space to sustainably provide for the communities we serve. Before COVID, teaching and learning had moved away from delivery just on our physical campuses to blended learning. But that's commonplace in Australia, and many students do not attend lectures in person but watch lecture recordings. However, much more blended now was moving towards flipped learning. That's where content, lectures, if you like, were now in engaging online modules, and engagement activities such as tutorials and workshops were on campus. So it makes the very most of the kind of expensive and limited face-to-face time you have with your students. During the pandemic, we moved all our courses to online delivery. Some tradition better than others, and in the main, it was those that had already moved from blended to flip that did best. But also certain disciplines did struggle more than others. STEM was a good example, as practicals had no easy online alternatives. Some of our most successful transitions were with examinations, taking what was 100% campus-based exams to 100% online. We used spare staff capacity to do this. So as there were no graduations on campus, we retrained those staff, creating an examination team to build online exams. All this required a lot of digital uplift, in particular professional development of staff in TEL, or Technology Enhanced Learning. Just in the 12 weeks of autumn session, there were some 14,500 professional development engagements with staff. In the start, professional development demands were on content delivery, then content engagement, and then on learning analytics to see how the students were performing. And finally, a shift towards less general help and more specific disciplinary support. Feedback from professional learning indicated the need to take into account the variable digital literacy of our staff. In response to their feedback, workshop design was changed and levelled as being for the novice, the intermediate, or the advanced operator. And some staff capability was built through participation in peer observation initiatives, a kind of train the trainer model. So that scaled well. Where things did not go so well was with the students, a lot of which use our campuses to access their learning. And our international students found themselves not only remote from our campuses, but in different time zones, not well accommodated to synchronous delivery. Digital poverty was another issue. Some students did not have computers of their own or shared with other relatives. We did put in place a loan scheme. The most popular was cameras for Zoom. Digital literacy was another issue, some students not having the skills or the capabilities yet to learn well online. This included how to collaborate and work together online. Working with others, which was one of the questions in our student feedback survey, took the biggest decline during the pandemic. In 2021, we moved into digital transformation, or DX. DX is all about removing the unevenness of online learning, but creating a set of digital learning threshold standards, or DLTs. So increasing the number of standards and raising them progressively brings us up to a kind of consistent standard where online quality learning is assured. So what are these DLTs? We have all heard the mantra pedagogy before technology, so digital pedagogy was probably our first one. We have to think what technology we need to fit the way we want to educate our students and not the other way around. We have developed flipped pedagogy that the pandemic accelerated by last year. Content goes online and you make the most of face-to-face by engaging them in learning. We have adopted a high flex delivery approach, so students can choose to attend face-to-face or online in real time or online asynchronously later on. And this suits, for example, international students or those that work or have family commitments. We have invested in technology in the form of Zeets, and that's Zoom-enabled teaching spaces. This allows dual mode delivery. Once you have a pedagogy, you need learning technology to support it. So another threshold standard is learning technology. We have a governance group in place to review current and upcoming learning technology. Our suite of technologies need to be fit for purpose and used to support learning, teaching and assessment. We know our approach does not always work for all disciplines. We saw that during the pandemic, when STEM needed different tools to that of text-based disciplines like business. We have to make online as engaging as face-to-face, so our new H5P platform would deliver interactive content engagement that can be accessed anywhere, anytime, regardless of time zone. I mentioned the big uplift of capabilities, so digital capability is another threshold standard. Our staff need the capabilities to deliver all of this. Last year, we saw unprecedented demand from our staff for a range of professional learning activities to upskill and reskill them. But we need to be aware of the digital divide. Academic staff or full-time academic staff with contracts have a lot of access to technology, but there is a gap with access to the same by our casual staff. And then there is the digital divide, digital poverty and digital literacy of our students. We often hear about students as digital natives. Our students are consumers of technology, but they don't always possess the skills to be creators. So through our Learn to Learn program, we upskill our students with digital skills to learn successfully in flipped online pedagogy, which it really requires self-regulated learners and a different set of skills. Learning analytics, if we're going to raise standards and measure the impact of digital transformation, we need learning analytics data to evaluate it. Academic dashboards have been created that help shape quality improvements, but we also need student-facing ones, so they can become, well, I guess, self-evaluators of their own learning. Artificial intelligence works by finding patterns in large amounts of data using machine learning, and it opens up the possibility of developing online learning environments that can be augmented by powerful, personalized digital assistants to help students kind of navigate through learning materials and activities. It is technology that importantly complements rather than competes with the human practices of their teachers. And other DLTs are digital content, especially the growing area of OERs, open educational resources, digital assessment, especially where marking and grading and feedback are important. Innovation in open and distance learning, the theme of this conference, requires digital content and technology that is accessible, high quality and equitable for all our student learners, no matter where they are studying from. This showreel highlights some of that innovation at Western. Enjoy. And we're happy to take any.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Simon. Professor Simon already also been joining with us. I think there are a number of the questions. Would you be kindly responding to a live for Professor Tian Bilawati, Dr. Martin, and Professor Simon?
Happy to take any questions. Yeah, my head of technology, Lene, is here as well. She's waiting.
So please welcome. I think I would like to share with all of you first for Professor Tian Balawati. Professor Tian Balawati, are you still with us now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Professor Tian Balawati, there's a questions. I think I would like to share to all of you. Hang on a second. Yeah, can you see my slide now, Professor Tian Balawati? Yeah,
I can read it.
Believe most, if not, teachers have high commitment for children education. However, with 67% of the teacher face difficulties in operating devices needed in our current education delivery system, what are your suggestions to take this make commitment reflected in teaching and learning process?
Am I supposed to answer like all of them together or one by one?
Yes, sure. Definitely. Yeah, I think and the third and the second and the third.
Okay, let me just read through first, yeah. The quality content access to quality. Okay. The first question is about digital literacy. I think as we know that when the pandemic happened and all the teachers have to teach online in Indonesia, there was no necessary nor appropriate preparation for the teachers. So the data that I showed you was based on the experience of teachers during the pandemic. So it is not surprising that teachers who were not prepared and were not prepared by the government to teach online so suddenly did not have any literacy in operating the devices needed. So I think for us now that we have experienced that rough or tough times during the pandemic, and I believe that the online learning is not going to go away in Indonesia, if not fully, I think it's going to be blended. So we have now, I think we have the momentum now to really provide training to all the teachers in Indonesia. I know it's not easy because we have millions of teachers, but I think through the government and the local government and also the educational sectors offices in the region, we could prepare teacher to be to have higher literacy both in operating the devices as well as in teaching or the mastering the competence, the online pedagogy. So there is no other way by training them and make them practice more. I think that for the first question. And for the second question, well, I'm a fan of OERs. So I know that there are OERs which are not that high in quality or maybe are not curated yet, or maybe not even being reviewed by anybody. But I think there are more good quality OERs in the internet. And the only investment that you have to make when you want to use OER is the time. You have to invest in your time to really search and identify the most the best quality of OER in your own field. And in time, with a lot of practice, you will be able to identify the repositories that has best quality of OERs in your field. And I just learned that Moodle also will have a repository for curated OER. So I think that's a good news for us. What do you think the access to curated content need to be ensured for general community as we may experience major curated content has? been protected. Yeah,
Yeah,
many
that's
curated
what it is.
content. I think if it's OER, I don't think it's going to be protected. OERs mean free access, you know. OER means sometimes we don't even need to log in. I mean, most of the time we don't even need to log in. So I'm not sure about the third question. I don't get the question, because if it's OER repository, I don't think it will be protected.
I think it's
Well, I think for now, maybe I hope it answers the questions.
yes. Okay, thank you, Professor Tian Balati. And the second one, I would like to invite Dr. Martin. Sorry. Yeah, this is the second one for the second speaker for Dr. Martin. Okay, I think Dr. Martin is already left. So this is for Professor Simon. I think your innovation related to the current online education is very challenging. So what is the challenge that you encountered during the transformation into online learning, Professor Simon?
The biggest challenges, okay, so I think probably the biggest challenge that everyone faces from online is the engagement, and I think Lene has already posted up something in the chat about the online engagement teaching hub, which people can view, and you can see some of those issues. Look, we can be very engaging in the face-to-face classroom. I think the problem that we face as teachers is not many of our students are always in the face-to-face classroom. They're in that hybrid space that we've talked about. Some of them are online, some of them are face-to-face, and some of them do things asynchronously. So I think what we are trying to do at Western anyway is, you'll have heard of high flex, and we try and do a high flex and a flexible learning approach. So we have our timetable, our curriculum, and our teaching modalities now in a very flexible space. So students can now pick and choose. Do they want that face-to-face? Do they want synchronous online, or do they want asynchronous online? And we're now starting to get deeper into some of the challenges we showed into our show reel, and that is, it's not just about content delivery and content engagement, which is relatively easy to do online. We're now challenging in the XR, VR space how to do practicals and fieldwork studies, because that's really the biggest challenge. That's very engaging stuff, which currently you can only do in the face-to-face environment. So that's the next kind of frontier that we're facing.
Okay, thank you, Professor Simon. I think it's very good news. I think you're now moving into the options to your students related to the how the teaching and learning should be collected, should be done in your university. So
yeah, I'd also say the other thing is that the biggest challenge that we have is making the link between flexibility. So a lot of our students in Western Sydney work, they have to do that to get them through the studies. And do they actually learn in those different environments? So they might be able to balance their study with their work, which is great, but do they actually learn now? And that's again down to learning analytics, data collection, to actually see if they're engaging and learning in those various modes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I would like to ask to all of the participants, would like to pose a question, whether to Professor Tian Balawati or Professor Simon Bedford, please. Siapa yang mute? Okay. I think hang on a second. I think, is there any other questions that has not been Professor Simon Bedford? There is a question from the participants. How do we increase the student satisfaction when they join online classes with the different time zones?
Yes, I think I've kind of had a go at the high flex one. So we have a lot of international students, a lot of them in Malaysia, yes, Indonesia, etc. And that was a big challenge, certainly in China, because of the firewall. That was always a big issue. But generally speaking, by creating really engaging asynchronous learning packages, students can actually study those anytime. So I think that makes that time zone difference acceptable. Where it gets a bit more challenging is when we want to do workshops, tutorials, etc. So kind of face-to-face activities. So again, what we tend to do is have something in the morning and something in the afternoon. So regardless of which time zone they're in, they can actually undertake those. And a similar thing when we did exams, because we used proctored exams and online exams, we had to have a variety of opportunities so students can still engage in those processes. It is difficult because Western Sydney has students all around the world, all around various time zones. So it is difficult, but I think that asynchronous stuff now is really probably the way forward.
Thank you. And the last, I think, about the vision related to opening up the access to the higher education to both of you. How do you think, how is your visions related to the future access to the higher education for general community? And Professor Tian Belawati and also Professor Seman. Professor Tian Belawati first, could you please respond?
Yeah, well, it is a very good question because I'm currently involved in revising the national standard for higher education. And in the team, we are visioning that the future higher education system in Indonesia should be more open. As we all Indonesian know that now, when we talk about higher education, we always only think about universities or institutes, the higher education institutions, and always think about students who are already inside the institutions. So what we would like to see in the future in Indonesia is that the higher education system um, really cater to all age group, university age group. Either they are already within the system or still outside the system. So we would like to make a seamless, interconnection between formal and non-formal education, as we know that the global trend now. A lot of people are taking free courses from MOOC sites, for example, and then many of them are of good quality. So we would like the Indonesian higher education system to be able to recognize those prior learning, in addition to other prior learning schemes or courses that people already take. So I think the future of higher education in Indonesia would be following what is already being the trend globally, which will be quite open, and in the hope that we would reach more people, and in the hope that we would provide multiple pathways for our people to pursue higher education. So they don't have to always start with the formal education right from the beginning when they just graduated from high school. They could go to formal or even in non-formal and informal education, and then later on in their life path, they would then go into the formal education. So hopefully with that, with opening up the system and also the what is it, the policies of education, and by adopting the open educational resources as well, and also the open licensing for all the academic products that would be produced by the public money, we would hope that more people would have access to the online learning resources. So that is at one side. On the other side, we also would like to see that the government invest more on developing the infrastructure of IT, so that the internet penetration would be more evenly distributed throughout the country. Because as we know now, it is not. And then that is the biggest hindering factors for our people to take advantage of the ample learning resources that are available for free in the internet. And I think we have to, together, we have to work for that. And I believe everywhere in the world, maybe including in Australia, right, Dr. Simon, that we have to collaborate more, and we have to create more content in local languages, because now 60, as I said, showed earlier, that 63% of the internet content are in English, and after English is like Chinese, and then Spanish, and then Japanese, and India. So we have to create more content in our own languages. So it doesn't have to be, new content. We can translate from other OERs, good OERs, and then so that it can be understood and be taken advantage by our people. So that's what I would like to see in the future. Thank you, Pak Daryono.
Thank you, Professor Tian Belawati. I would like to invite Professor Seman. What is your vision related to the, especially related to the address for the sustainable development goals on liberating the open educations for the general community in the future?
Look, I think our approach for higher education, and Tian has outlined quite a lot of that already, is about looking at reskilling and upskilling the educational workforce. I think that's really, really important. Look at those traditional degrees now at Western. What we've tried to do is move them to more what we call multi and transdisciplinary. So it's a bit like research where the interesting stuff is at the edges of the disciplines. So we're now looking at 2 or 3 discipline areas in schools to build those curricula. So it's not just a chemistry degree, for example, it's a hybrid degree. So
Right.
the students are able to pick and choose those stuff. We think very much about pathways into through university and back into. So it's about that kind of reskilling, but it's also those easy stepping stones up to university study. So we do a lot of pathways. We have our college, we have our international college, so people can come and study certificates and diplomas. But I think the biggest area now, and we've touched on this a little bit with OERs, is I think alternative credentials. I think that, or micro credentials, if you like, I think are a great stepping stone. So people who don't think they're going to ever get into higher education can try these things out, and they can be credit worthy, they can build up, they can stack. So people can eventually get, you know, that sense of belonging and think, I can actually do this, and step through a more traditional degree. So those are the things that we're trying to do. But we're also partnering with a lot of offshore universities called through TNE, so that's transnational education. So we're looking at our programs and delivering them offshore, because again, you have the expertise there, you have the language there, you can translate it into that particular courses. And of course, when it comes to practical courses, engineering, etc., you have that context. You can send them out into the workforce. They can do that work integrated learning. We can't deliver that for everyone in Australia. So I think transnational education is, again, a big part to play in this.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Dian Pelawati and Professor Seman Bedford, and also all of the participants, Dr. Martin Dakiamas, and all of the participants in the conference. It's very insightful and also thoughtful. We are hoping that the vision in open education will be nurtured and will be further for advancement of the better online education in the future. Okay, everyone, thank you so much again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone.